Wow, brilliant. Thanks for everybody that's gone before. I mean, it's always seeing, I miss like real life events, of course, and we've all been overly zoomed, but just having these creative conversations and all these diverse voices and all these different ways of approaching our craft. And ultimately, if we're human, which we are, I think most of us are, we are creative. There is no doubt about it. That's what defines us, aside from other species on the planet. All species create in some ways, but ours is so much more diverse. And when we talk about, or when I talk about creative, this can be anything from a recipe for a cook. This can be a games programmer, an artist, a city planner. It's creating in some way. And this is what we're trying to address with the Sustainable Creative Manifesto. Now, I'm using this word. It's a big word. Is even the word sustainable and manifesto right? And that's one of the questions we'll be posing today. And I've got fantastic speakers with us and friends, Kalkidan, Vineeta and Amelia. Now, I'm not going to go into what they do. They may wish to have a little conversation about what they do in their own roles. I've had the pleasure of meeting some over the years, some more recently, like Amelia, each doing something brilliant in their own way and pushing boundaries and not really taking shit from anyone. I'm sure Kalkidan, you probably get a lot out there with how much you put yourself out there into the space and tread this path of change makingness. But for me, it was really gathering different voices today to take a glimpse of what this manifesto could be. Now, the manifesto, I know we've only got a short amount of time, and Laura will tell me off when I talk too much anyway. The idea with this is, I've been creating for a long time. I used to be head of graphics at Eden Project. And what I saw and what I still see is people adapt to the client's brief. So if you're a green business, you produce a green thing. If you're not a green business, you may stimulate doing a green action, but you may just go, okay, yeah, you want this, so I'll do it on this shiny piece of material, this thing. And it's not really addressing, you're just delivering the outcome based on a budget and not the natural sustainable pathways of how it affects our social and natural capital. So the manifesto, and there's been many manifestos before, you know, people would have known the First Things First manifesto that was produced in the 60s. This outlined this, it's in Wikipedia and many other places about how design can do more. But I want to broaden it from design to creators, that anybody can create better. Well, yes, we've got to get on with our jobs and our work and our lives, but there's a better way to do it. So this is enough of a conversation from me, because we've got some better people than I to speak today. So if I can bring Kalkidan, Amelia and Vineeta into the conversation, maybe just do a quick whirlwind intro of yourselves and what you're doing, the change you're making in the world, and then we've got some questions for you.
I can go first.
Go for it,
Vineeta. So my name is Kalkidan. I have a sustainable fashion store in Devon. Last year we won an award for the best high street shop, and we won't stop talking about it. I've been very passionate about sustainability, I think, ever since I could comprehend injustice. I think I'm also very interested in how, you know, we as people withstand and experience the impacts of climate change in very different ways, depending on what our backgrounds are, where we live, what our cultures are, what our incomes are. Most recently, I've launched a company called Schwap. It is a service to retailers that enables them to manage and monetize the entire lifespan of products. I guess what I'm really interested in is responsibility and how individuals in business identify what actually falls underneath their responsibility, because you know, it's very easy to do business and kind of ignore the consequences of some of your decisions and actions, or at least it used to be. Over time, I think that becomes harder to do, and I think what the future kind of will result in, I think future opportunities in this area, is more clearly describing what the impacts of different models are, what the impacts of different decisions are, and rewarding, you know, companies that are doing that effectively. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, thank you. Vineeta, can I get you?
Hi, I'm Vineeta. I'm from Wholegrain Digital. We're a web design agency, and we are striving to be the most sustainable company in the UK, if not the world. It's a big statement, but the idea for us, the reason we started, was to come up with a business that will help other people communicate how they are trying to mitigate climate change and talk about human rights and also resolve issues related to it. It sounds like a big mouthful for a web design agency, but the idea was to use whatever skills we have to make the world better. 5 years ago, we launched our internal program to measure the carbon footprint of websites. Some of you may have come across website carbon.com, which is something that we launched. And since then, we are now working on version 3. And sorry for those people who have tried the carbon calculator, it has broken a few times. We've been a victim of our own success. We also worked with several agencies a couple of years ago to produce a Sustainable Web Manifesto, which is yet another manifesto and is open to be challenged. And that idea was to bring lots of creatives together, but mainly in the web sector, to talk about the carbon emissions, which I'm sure Matt's talked about and we'll again touch on later. I'd like to pass to Amelia.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Amelia. As everybody here, I'm sure, I am completely environmentally centred and utterly obsessed with the sea. I am a huge advocate for the youth voice in the climate conversations, so I try and get involved as much as I can and try and avoid burnout, but I have failed on that quite a few times, so still learning that balance. So yeah, try and get involved in those conversations both at ground level and more governmental level. So it's really exciting, really challenging, but really great to get voices in the room. Kind of on top of that, for my day job, I work in renewable energy, so working on innovating renewable energy projects and kind of focusing on community energy. So that's really leveraging on the power of people and the power of communities to empower people to know that they can create the change and to provide them with the facilities and the opportunities to do so. So yeah, that's kind of a quick overview.
Brilliant, thank you, all of you. Yeah, what we get from there is, you know, responsibility, empowerment, and but make the world a better place by the things we do. So, you know, as simple as that, but we know it's not a simple process. We know it takes tenacity, determination, bullheadedness, all of these things, to get them through. And as Vineeta said, you know, and I mentioned there are so many manifestos out there, and Vineeta and I have been having a conversation in the background across the week, and do they make any difference? You know, is it just a bunch of words? You know, we see so many manifestos and then all these climate declarations out there. Music declares, creatives declares, you know, everybody declares, but are we just signing up to things that are a bunch of signatures that we get a little bit of a buzz because we put our names to it? Are we really taking, you know, action on small level to seismic level? Ultimately, I don't think our own creative sector in the UK or any sector realise anywhere in the world how powerful creativity is at all. And as far as I'm concerned, and I'm using somebody else's quote, and Mark will probably know who it is, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, creatives are more powerful than scientists, governments, environmentalists, politicians put together. Human world's created, that means we have a role and responsibility. And again, the manifesto is about coming up with those ideas and those challenges. Now, Vineeta, could I just step in with what you and I have been talking about this week and see how it feeds out into what everybody else thinks?
Sure. It's a real minefield to launch a new manifesto, because you need key principles that you're going to talk about, and the people who are putting their name to it are actually saying, I agree with you. But like you said, once they have put their signature to the manifesto, are they actually going to live by the principles? How do you make people think that they have to live the principles that they just signed up to? And that's the hardest task. From our experience, we have 1,700 signatures, which is not a lot, but still is a fair amount for 1,700 people to say that they're going to say they're going to be sustainable in their web practices. I don't think they literally start actually actioning it, but it rubs off the right way. And over time, it's that 8 point of contact thing. You have to hear the same thing 8 times to actually believe it's true. I wonder if more manifestos talked about how humans as creative are going to be able to change the world, people will start believing it. And I'm an optimist realist. So I just think more manifestos that actually talk about this, the more chances are people will hear it. So I'm up for a manifesto, not a problem.
Kalkidan, what's your sort of take on this from your own experiences?
Yeah, I think the reality of the general experience of climate change is that we're all under such high levels of stress. There's this real feeling of futility of our efforts, as well as complicity and kind of making the world less inhabitable. So I think people need emotional anchors, if nothing else. And I think manifestos, particularly with tight-knit cohorts, are a really effective way to do that. And then I also think that, I think most of us here are either from smaller, mid-sized companies or independents or freelance backgrounds. I think there's a lot to be said for the necessity to tie these multiple groups together, because a lot of climate change is being driven by a very small amount of companies. Less than 100 companies contribute over 70% to global carbon emissions, and they're huge mammoths, huge power, political spending power, and manifestos help to build our community so that we can start to compete with the level of power and influence that they have, at least culturally, if not financially to begin with. So yeah, I think it's important for lots of reasons. I could go on, but there's some reasons why.
And just over to Amelia, but touching on that point and really looking at young people. So, again, the idea with the manifesto was a kind of can-do set of principles that we can act upon. Other manifestos that I've looked at, there's some brilliant manifestos, and I've asked you all to kind of show an example a bit later. There are simple ones. I found the First Things First manifesto a little bit too complex, I think. So again, it's making it graspable and actionable and enabling. But I think to think about young people, Amelia, in light of a recent survey of 10,000 young people aged 16 to 25 from various countries worldwide, over half agreed that statement that humanity is doomed, which isn't good. In a world where we're facing eco-anxiety as a normal staple of young people, how can so it's a big question for you actually, Amelia, it's all on you. How can we ensure the Sustainable Creative Manifesto sort of resonates with this age group and transcends nationalities?
Yeah, sure. So obviously a very big question.
Yeah, I know, sorry.
There's so much to tackle, that's all good. So I think there's a good and there's a bad spin on it. So I'll start with the bad to get out of the way. So I think obviously with younger generations, we're going into a world of work where we don't know how long the future is going to be. We don't know if we're going to be able to thrive or not. So of course we're scared of it. And I honestly don't think that will 100% change and shift until the science shows that it has, because it's such a huge thing. We need that concrete evidence to say, yes, it's going to be okay, because we kind of need to be we just need that reassurance from science, because obviously that's something that we can buy into and believe. But the good news, I think, is every single person here and with the manifesto have the power to empower young people, to keep them close to it. So what we want to really avoid is young people feeling distant from climate change, and for them to not feel like they can do anything about it. And it's not even that maybe they feel too small to make a difference, but that they completely just don't relate to it at all. And they see it as a thing that's just going to happen, and whatever they do isn't going to change. But every single person, and this manifesto has the power to empower them, to bring them closer to it, to make sure that they know that they can truly make a difference, and give them all of the tools and all of the resources they need to to do something about it. So I think something really important with the manifesto is to make sure that we keep young people close to it and we tie in them wherever we can.
I love that, and I think, you know, because they, as we hear from so often from Greta and others, they will inherit what we've done before, and for them, you know, if we are not acting now, and the future is always now, then it's too late. I mean, even if you look at, this is going a bit slightly aside, but there was this thing about, you know, when the greenhouse, what was it, the gases that are emitted from fridges and stuff like that were causing the acid rain, you know, a couple of decades ago, and things still do. But if that hadn't happened, they say we wouldn't have averted, you know, where we are now. We would be in a more catastrophic place. So it's taking action. And also, go back to sort of Vineeta said, we don't ever know sometimes when we put these things out there who we're inspiring and whose mindsets are changing. So just by putting it out there and having our voices out there is so important in all shapes and forms. And in an ever complex world where you just go, what do I do? How do I do it? Just do something. I think we put in our workbook, you know, from Jen Bias, the antidote to despair is action. Now, I don't feel despair. I'm a realistic, practical optimist. I've slightly changed that recently to be a bit more practical. And I'm a joyful activist because creativity is joyful. It can be hard, but, you know, when we've got the ability to create, it's joyful that what we can bring into the world, whether that's, you know, clothes, pixels, art, whatever, ceramics, it's joyful. Now I'm going to go into a bit. I think I ask you all to maybe you got my message or not, but to share a manifesto or something that you like or dislike with the audience. Basically, you don't have to show a slide, you can hold it up, you can just talk about it, and if you've got a link, just post it afterwards, okay? And why you like it. Who would like to go first?
Happy to. I like this one, and what I don't like about it is, I'll tell you what I don't like about it first, is that it doesn't have a secure SSL certificate. So when I give it to somebody, they get really wary of it. But it's called manifesto.org, and manifesto is talking about how minimalism should be used for good. And it's the Pareto's law of 80-20, and how perfect is the enemy of good, because first we need to do good and then we can do better. If we get stuck on thinking everything has to be perfect, we won't move. So we have to start doing good to then get better and then perfect it. And I think that principle is what Manifesto talks about. I have no idea who made it. I just liked it. I like the name, so I decided to put it out there. Sorry, next.
That is fantastic, and even in the name as well, kind of like manifesto, and it just breaks it down. It's going to be something simple that I can, you know, hopefully act upon. And I love the sentiment of, you know, do good, not perfect, because I think in sustainability as well, there's this thing about perfectionism, and Mark rightly pointed out that B Corp is looking at this kind of, in a way, could be seen as elitist at the moment, whereas what people forget, the certification is like the crowning glory of it, so to speak. The framework is the important thing, and whether you're certificated or not doesn't matter. But again, having these things that we can work to, these compasses. Kalkidan.
So mine is kind of an email manifesto, an email etiquette manifesto. I put the link in the chat. You know, emails, I think, you know, most of us spend most of our work lives answering them or writing them, which is in itself like a pain in the butt. But in addition to that, of course, they have an ecological footprint as well. I think that we could all do more to make our email etiquette a little bit better. I quite like this version of the manifesto is less tongue-in-cheek, but there are some kind of tongue-in-cheek ones out there, which I think kind of encourage people. I think one of the challenges with pursuing sustainability is it can feel a little bit burdensome. So the more you can add humour or just lighten up the mood, I think the better it can be received. And also I think it's helpful to tie in sustainable goals with other objectives, like, say, for example, saving people time or increasing people's, you know, I think incentives are a really important part of sustainable business models and sustainable business practices. So I like approaches which take into consideration that, you know, we are humans who are trying our best largely, who are busy and like to laugh as well.
Happiness and laughter is always good, and again, you know, a good way to that joyful actions towards the space and time and the world we're in. So Amelia, how about yourself? What brilliance have you got for us?
Amazing. So I came across Stella McCartney's A to Z manifesto, A to Z manifesto, and basically, so I popped the link in the chat, and it breaks down each letter and it puts a word to each letter, and it also incorporates different artists and photographers, which I thought was really great to include different mediums, because it kind of emphasizes on that collaboration. And obviously we know as creatives that the medium is the message, so engaging people through, sorry, there's loads of dogs just started barking outside. Engaging people through imagery is so powerful. Also really liked, so there's quite a few quotes that are inserted in there, and I feel like I'm an absolute sucker for quotes, and it's just something to hold on to and something to kind of play in your mind or jot down. So yeah, I just really resonated with it, and thought it was really well structured, because it kind of takes you on the journey of following that alphabet.
Fantastic. Again, as you said there, it takes you on a journey, which I think is a really important thing. All right, the journey needs to be faster now, because we've all had various journeys, and I mean, I was reading about COP26, so I started going off the side, but you know, in 1992, Agenda 21 was set, which prior to COP and things like that, and the Committee of Full Pies, and that was basically about that we would hit a bunch of sustainable goals by the year 2000, which we completely didn't do at all, as we know, and it's even the Sustainable Development Goals we're not going to hit, but we are taking action on them. So I think, again, having these things, we're not going to overnight change the world of creativity but we could maybe stimulate something. And I think Don't Cry Wolf in the background have been brilliantly pushing things forward. I think today, what we're doing at Goodfest and creating the Sustainable Creative Manifesto, I keep nearly saying web manifesto, it's which I was involved in as well, with the brilliance of Wholegrain led on. But with that, we've had over 250,000 sort of imprints on some of the comms today that are around this. So who knows who might be influenced? And on a bigger picture, I sit on some boards for Creative UK and things like that, or not on boards, but in round tables. So I'm really pushing, hopefully, the Design Council and stuff to really take it serious. Now, just going on, because I know time is short, what advice can you offer as a thought starter for our combined hive mind for the Sustainable Creative Manifesto? If I can, I know you just answered anyway, Amelia, one, but if you could just start on that one, so what would be a starter?
Yeah, of course. So I think it's important to always think about creating space for things that you don't necessarily think of immediately, and for different perspectives. So obviously we're so privileged in the fact that we're all here today, but unfortunately that means a lot of people who can't be here today, and their perspectives matter just as much. So keep perspective and just think about all the different impacts and all the different elements, and think about the people who your decisions impact the most, whilst you're thinking of your...
Brilliantly well said. Kalkidan.
I think that I would really call for everyone to consider our context in the global environment. You know, although we experience climate change, of course, we're not experiencing it to the same extent as our brothers and sisters in coastal cities or in sub-Saharan cities, or, you know, areas in the Sahel. And environmentalism, like without like an intersectional political approach, risks failure, because it fails to identify that a lot of the solutions for long-term you know, communities and societies actually already exist in parts of the world. and there's a lot of learning that can be taken from them. And in order to learn those lessons, you know, a non-Eurocentricized approach is necessary. And crucial. So, you know, as we're thinking about our environmental impact, if that's not tied to our social impact, you know, in this country as well as others, then we can create systems that can be really quickly exclusionary to the working class or to the poor or to people in, you know, societies that don't operate like ours. Yeah. So I'd say, you know, these have to be part of what we consider, as well as, you know, recycling and everything else.
Yeah, perfectly put. And I think that openness, I mean, this kind of, you know, a manifesto for all. I mean, it's interesting that John from Don't Cry Wolf, he's going to do a bit where he hates the word, you know, manifesto and things like that, which that's going to be part of it later on, and see Denzel's put Goodfesto in. But sometimes we just need language. And one of the hopes with this as well, that is we can get it translated out into different languages as we go forwards. With the Sustainable Creative Manifesto, what we've got is, not only is it a low carbon built website built by Nick from the Sustainable Dev and from Lee, but it at present reacts as well to how much fossil fuel is in with the grid. So it color changes based on how much fuel is in the grid at the time. So little bits of things. It's also only 0.1 grams of CO2. But the other side of things that is going to happen is everybody who's here today will have an opportunity to have their name put to the manifesto as a founder of it in some shape or form. So there'll be an opportunity that, one, you were here to help create it, and then what actions you've taken yourself to actually be aligned with it. Another thing, I think, well, over to you, Vineeta, just on your response to that question as well.
My goodness, I can't sum it as well as these two have. I was going to talk about inclusivity, accessibility,
no,
but the way you put it was just perfect. I have nothing to add. Less is more, Matt. Less is more.
Less is more, indeed it is. But what's your, like, all right, so let's go on to optimism and hope, because we've only got 4 more minutes left anyway. So because we really, the breakout time is key. So I think what, you know, how can we ensure that the manifesto inspires positivity and hope for this generation and coming generations? Now, you've all touched on this, but could you kind of give one word and a reason for that? And if I start with you, Vineeta, that would be great.
Yeah. It's not one word, but it's the don't try to prescribe solutions in the manifesto, just describe the problem and the solutions will come, is what I was thinking. Yeah,
that's perfect. So because that's what we all do sometimes, and especially the males in the world, we jump at creating a solution rather than listening and creating the space. So I love that. Amelia.
I'd probably say 3 words: empower your networks, because obviously we can make lots of change when we all come together, and all of your skills and all of your knowledge and your experience you can pass on to others and just really help emphasize their ability to create change too.
Cool. So, yeah, totally empowering networks, and as we hear so often, collaboration, togetherness. And I'll just jump it, you know, there. One thing I've found with the creative sector, and people can slap me down for this, is it tends to work in silos, like so many other organizations. It's like having your homework, you're doing you're in a school class and you're covering, you're not sharing that information. I think we've got to uncover the invisible and the hidden and share, because that's the only way forwards. Kalkidan, as we're getting close to wrapping up, we've got 3 minutes though, so still loads of time. What about yourself? You can do as many words as you want.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the circular economy, and that brings me a lot of hope. I think there's, so I work in retail, and I think there's a lot of opportunity in the things that already exist. You know, one of mine and my partner's favorite thing to do is to go to the local recycling centre, like rummage, and you know, he buys a bike every weekend, does it up, and it's in our garden. It's not very, quite circular, I guess. But I think that, you know, as creative minds, as problem solvers, as adaptive creatures. We have the opportunity to like completely reimagine society.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting, and it can be daunting, of course, but if we can move past the fear, like I think, you know, we can change everything, and you know, that's full of hope, and it brings me a lot of hope.
Brilliant. Again, yeah, hope. And it's interesting you say fear, because I think sometimes like this, like stage fright, you know, I get nervous coming on sessions like this and things, but that stage fright, that fear is needed to understand the goodness and the possibilities as well. And it goes back to this, what Vanessa was saying, like this, you know, good but not perfection, and working continually towards it. And because, like, you know, sustainability, or whatever we want to call it, regeneration, whatever of the billion words, isn't a tick box. It isn't I'm done. There's always more work to be done, and more people to think about, and more, you know, more inclusive. And again, with inclusivity, diversity, and all these things, we could worry about it too much, but in the words of a past mentor of mine, James Victory, action begets thinking. Now, we do need to think, but sometimes we need to very much act first, then start looking at, you know, what the issue might be. I think in the path of the doer, they say 99% of ideas never come to fruition, and only 1% are ever truly acted upon. I'm going to leave with a stat. So 80% of environmental impact is decided at the design stage. You probably all know this. 70% of the world's paper passes through the hands of creatives in one shape or other, including toilet paper, which who gives a crap, and organizations like that are ruling the roost on now. 13 billion websites and counting in the world, and it's only going to get more, and they use a lot of energy. So all these things, you know, this Zoom call per person per hour, roughly on a 13-inch laptop, is 2 grams of CO2. If you're on renewable energy like me, that's a good thing, but don't worry if you're not. But it's something to think about, is how we clean up the energy and the things we use. I'm going to wrap up there. I think what we've got is hope, optimism, global responsibility, and basically, as we all know, how to make the world a better place, inspire everybody now, everybody to come, everybody that's gone before that might not be able to hear us, but they might be in some sort of limbo world, watching the, you know, the future of our world. So thank you to all three of you. You know, I'm so chuffed I got to spend some time with all of you on Zoom, and thanks for being here today.